of victory and the agony of defeat.
Great ball around the corner, Penasini. He beats them all. Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle. Sharks coming through. None of them can hold him.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another live edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. Joining me as your host, John, also known as 4020, is my good mate Sixties, also known as Craig. And we don't get to have normal episodes on the Tip Sheet, it feels like, anymore, mate, because there is always something going on, and obviously the big topic, as you can see in the title of the podcast, of the live show tonight, is the Bailey Simonsson Bombshell, which we have been scrambling to try and get some details on, because NRL Tonight just dropped that on us in the last 60 seconds of the broadcast, and we haven't seen anything on it since in the DT or the SMH, but I do hope that you have some clarity on it, big fella. But before we do get to talking about Bailey Simonsson, before we do get to talking about the Parramatta Eels and the NRL, because there is a lot happening in the code, let's do our usual intro, which includes checking on you and then giving some shout-outs.
Yeah, mate, doing well. Hope you're doing well too. Hope all of our listeners are having a great day, great time at the moment. Big event last night with the 10-year member loyalty event. I'll talk about that when we get into the Eels news. But as you said, the Bailey Simonsson news literally just was almost felt like it was thrown up as an afterthought at the end of.
I thought it was almost like a graphical mess up,
Yeah.
by the way, Bailey Simonsson asked for a release. It's like, oh,
yeah.
We saw him playing New South Wales Cup last week, but yeah,
there was nothing floating around. The only thing that was floating around was concern maybe he'd had a bit of a lower back injury.
Yeah, it looked like he was really fighting through that in the second half of the Cup game. But yeah, it wasn't part of the Team was Tuesday 22, which fueled both speculation thoughts there that he'd been injured or something was going on, and obviously something was going on.
Yeah. So look, we'll get to that, and we'll get to it very, very shortly. But before we do, the usual shout outs, first of all, to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta, Greg and the team, the OG sponsors, and of course, Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels, where you will see us in our pre-game preview every home match day at CommBank Stadium. We're in at Sterlo's. We'll be there this Sunday. We'll be there around about 2 hours before kickoff. Hopefully we'll find out if we've got a legend guest who'll be with us this particular Sunday. But yes, we'll be there. And John, look, let's not delay any further. Hit the stinger.
Yeah, plenty to get into, so let's dive into the news.
News team, assemble!
Yeah, let's lead off with that Bailey Simonsson news that's just come out. As we mentioned before, there was nothing floating around about any issues with Bailey. Whether something has gone on in recent weeks, we don't know. He wasn't selected in first grade last week, where we thought maybe there was a chance that Bailey would be selected. He wasn't selected this week. Now, I guess it's a chicken and the egg situation. Was there an issue before that led to non-selection? Was the request put forward to the Eels, if this news is spot on, was the request put through to the Eels as a consequence of this week's team list? You'd have to say that for this news to come out, John, that it's probably via a player agent.
Yeah.
We believe Bailey Simonsson is managed by the Oars. And the Oars, of course, the agents that look after Dylan Brown. And it'd be an interesting relationship between the club and the Oars. They also looked after Brad Arthur. So, yeah, it sort of smells like that, John. I mean, we can't say for sure because we just don't know. The one thing that I will always say about Bailey Simonsson, and you've experienced this yourself, is that he's always been a player that supporters could approach and talk to, and he's always been very giving of his time as a player towards the fans.
Absolutely wonderful in that regard. You would never say a bad word against Bailey in his relationship as a player towards the fandom.
Yeah, and I don't think as a player out on the field that we could have asked for much more. However, with all that said, and I'll always have Bailey's back with regard to a lot of things. But if the agent has agitated for a release, or if there's been, or if Bailey himself has asked for a release from the club, I think it's only heading in one direction, because Jason Riles has already cut a swathe through the playing ranks at the club to have, I guess, a different face to the roster. And if a player wants out, I don't think there'll be any hesitation from Riles to say, if you want to leave, then you're welcome to.
As a coach, you always want a player that's completely on board. Eels would gain on this release. You'd have to imagine it would be a full release if it does eventuate. Club not offering a payout because the player would have initiated, or players management would have initiated this request. Opens up a top 30 spot. Opens up a bit of cap space for next year. So it, I suppose, presents the Eels with as much an opportunity as a problem. There's a number of young players internally that will probably step up too in the meantime and perhaps beyond. Raz Narva and Richard Penasini come to mind immediately, Craig, as young prospects that have spent considerable time in the New South Wales Cup this year, being prepared, not necessarily for this sort of scenario, but for a generalist scenario in this situation where the Eels need more depth in the backline moving forwards. So they do have internal options, but yeah, maybe they still look externally now to add a bit more NRL experience to the backline if this release does eventuate, and we're taking this to its natural, or arguably natural conclusion. There is still water to pass under this bridge. I don't know if the two parties can broker some sort of a compromise that sees Bailey stay at the club, because I'm looking at the chat response. Bailey is a very popular player, and I understand why. He's been wholehearted on the field, and as we mentioned just before, Craig, a fantastic individual off it. I, again, cannot speak highly enough of what Bailey has been like as a player to approach as a fan. Always been giving his time, very personable, just a great bloke to chat football with. So it would be really unfortunate to see the back of him. Been a fantastic servant for the Blue and Gold. But again, we're a little bit short on details, Craig, as to why he would have requested the release, whether it's a sort of, not power play, but continued fallout of that relationship with the All Brothers. Don't know. Does Bailey want more frontline NRL opportunities? Perhaps. But yeah, I'm still passing the DT and the Sydney Morning Herald to see if we're getting some sort of breaking article to go alongside that NRL Tonight bombshell, because I don't think NRL 360 has mentioned it just yet. But yeah, what an unfortunate way to start the live show.
Yeah, it absolutely is. As we both attested, we see value in Bailey Simonsson, but if it's gone down this path, then to me there is only one conclusion that it's going to head towards. The other thing, John, is, could it head there immediately? Could it be that Bailey Simonsson has played his last game for the club? Would you have a player who, whether it's been himself or his agent, that's agitated for an immediate release, would you keep him in the playing group, be it that he's playing New South Wales Cup this week, or wants to continue to be available for selection for first grade in the coming weeks?
Yeah, I mean,
has this
it's
ended
a fair
the
question.
relationship?
Exactly. Is the bridge completely burnt now? Obviously, he can't go to another NRL club in 2025. That June 30 deadline is transpired, and you can no longer go across mid-season. So if he is going to join an opposition club, a rival, it will be for next year. How comfortable the Eels are their backline depth stocks, given that another story that we're going to be covering very shortly is another two injuries, two major losses to young talented players in the squad, to top 17 contributors, to a starting back in Sean Russell. how much does Jason Ryles have faith in his backline stocks? Because without Bailey, Jordan Samrani's been called in this week. You've got Hayes Dunster there, and you've got Richard Penasini and Araz Namva and Jake Tungle, and then you're getting a bit skinny, aren't you, this year?
Well, I then wonder, John, and by the way, I just hope that things work out from a personal point of view with Bailey. I just hope things work out for him contract-wise the way he wants them to work out in this instance. But my next question is, will this mean that we will see Dylan Brown in the coming weeks? Could he slot in at centre? Is it the right option to go with inexperience in the centres with Jordan Samrani, or will Jason Ryles be tempted to play Dylan Brown in the centre role? And even though that's an unusual position for him, I'm sure he'd be able to cover that in terms of the basic requirements of centre play.
Every indication we've been given so far would point to me that Jason Ryles would play Richard Penasini or a similar caliber of rookie over Dylan Brown playing in the centres right now.
I'm not entirely sure about that, John, because I think the amount of time, say, that Richie's had in lower grades this year is quite limited, and I'm wondering whether he's just better to build his confidence in New South Wales Cup, because he had a very good game last week, very confident game, albeit against a South Sydney team that was probably a Ron Massey Cup team, and that's where we have to be realistic about the side that they fielded last week. But I'm just wondering whether, given the amount of time that Richie lost last year and then he's lost again this year, whether an NRL debut for him is like 2026 rather than 2025, and we've reached a tipping point in terms of the loss of experience with the injuries that have happened this week and the players that are moving on. Have we hit that point where Jason Ryles has to call on Dylan Brown? Because he was quite strong in his praise for Dylan as a person, at how Dylan had handled the situation at the moment within the club. So, and I haven't been at training like I used to be because of obviously personal circumstances, but I've got to a couple of sessions over the last few weeks since Dylan Brown we know that he's not going to be selected, but he's been out there at every session, been involved in every training session, has been helping out on the field, is not being asked to play New South Wales Cup. So he's not putting him down in a grade where he doesn't think he should be playing. So I'm just wondering, have we hit that tipping point?
It's a fair question, but I still think Jason Ryles has tipped his hand in my opinion, that he would have to be stretched to beyond top 30 resources to play Dylan. At least that's how it feels. But we're going to find out very soon, maybe as early as next week.
Yeah, John, who have we got in our chat at the moment, and are there any sentiments that are being expressed right at this point?
I mean, a lot of like I suppose frustration, or fans upset because they've got a lot of time for Bailey Simonsson, much like us. But I do see AJ is in there, and he gave us some extra clarity there, saying that NRL Tonight features Bailey's wife as a reporter on that show, plus Fox Sports, so it adds further validity to the report. So yeah, Fox would have it looks like Fox would have pretty good insider running here, which is probably why they've broken the story miles ahead of everyone else. So thank you for sharing for that one, AJ. That's a good bit of I suppose extra validity to the reports. But yeah, I see plenty of regulars: Mike Fleet, Michael Formose, a couple of mics there. I saw Chris Hill before, said hello to him. Deb Hennessy's been in chat doing good stuff. We got a couple of new faces relative to the comment section. It feels like maybe you've been watching, but see Jesse's Journey and Matt Milford. Mifsud. We got Tyler Lewis. Jazz is in there going well. Kicks. Yeah, a lot of people frustrated at the sudden breaking story, and I understand why, because Bowie's been such a great contributor to the Parramatta Eels on the field. That last year he battled through that partial ACL tear to put in the sort of week-to-week efforts that he did before he finally succumbed to the injury was genuinely heroic stuff on the field. And again, anyone that's interacted with Bailey off the field will know how much of a wonderful bloke he is, and that's why it's a bit of a gut punch to potentially be losing him.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's work towards that team list, and I'll push back talking about the member event just to the end of the Eels news, John. You've talked about this being the injury list, team list. So let's kick it off with what we're looking at with NRL players that are no longer available.
Yeah, Team List Tuesday is actually Injury Report Tuesday this week, with both the NRL and NRLW ravaged by injuries. Fans that attended the 10-year member event that you alluded to just then would have spied Sean Russell in a hand brace. And I think reports quickly trickled out that Russell was in doubt for the remainder of the season. The club confirmed that today with they specified just a hand injury, but I believe it's a broken hand. Puts him out in the vicinity of 4 to 5 weeks, which is essentially the season, Craig, unless he has a Wolverine-style recovery. And unfortunately, the other eel that was spied with a medical appendage attached to one of their limbs was poor Sam Tuivasa, who has had a miserable run of luck with injuries, and he's done an MCL sprain. The capacity or grade has not been officially listed by the club. Let's refer to my team list report here. I think they just put MCL sprain. Yeah, they just put it knee MCL. So they said next season as the guideline, and that would mean it's a grade 2 to 3 sprain, because a grade 2 puts you in the 4 to 6 week bracket. Grade 3 is 6 to 8 weeks, I think, if I recall, based on past reports. And unfortunately, that means we've lost 2 of our younger players in the squad. And for Jason Riles, he's made straightforward replacements, Craig, obviously opting for not Bailey Simonsson, which means in the back line, Josh Papali continues to work at fullback, Zach Lomax and Josh Adokar on the wings. And do want to mention his Indigenous round. So we've got Josh Adokar and Jermaine Hopgood representing the club in that regard with that fantastic Indigenous kit that we have this year. But in the centres, Will Penasini will work on the right with Jordan Samrani caught up on the left. Dean Hawkins and Mitch Moses are in the halves. Jermaine Hopgood just spoke about him. He's in the front row of Junior. Riley Smith at dummy half. Charlie Geimer, Jack Williams, and Dylan Walker named to start at lock forward. Probably something to consider that he could be bounced back to the bench ahead of kickoff for Luca Moretti. We have to wait and see. But Luca is on the interchange alongside Talon De Silva, Matt Dury, and Kelma Tuolangi, who gets the recall, I suppose, as a function of Sam's injury. But he also had a pretty good game against the Rabbitohs on the weekend in New South Wales Cup. Showed off his soccer skills a couple of times. Scored 1 try, nearly scored 2, tying the ball ahead. Extend the roster, Ronald Volkman, Dan Keir, Hayes Dunster, Tony Mattielli, and Dylan Brown. And we're taking on the North Queensland Cowboys, which of course we'll preview later this week. But they've got a host of reinforcements this week, opposite the Parramatta Eels. We lose players, they're game players, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, you mentioned about the Eels playing in the Indigenous jersey this week, the Indigenous round being played across 2 weeks.
So every team gets to use the home and away kit, or home kit as well, I think, which is a good. I like it. The kits are so good. It's a shame that you don't always get to feature them in Indigenous round. Yeah,
so the last few years, Indigenous artist Sean Kinchella's been doing been designing the Eels jerseys, coming up with some absolute smashing designs. I don't think he's missed
yet, has he? He's got very good vision for the jersey.
He hasn't. I think he goes by Local Famous.
Yes, on socials.
Social media identity, and he's of course found that that culture, the history, all in the design of the jersey, which shows the relationship between the Parramatta River and the eel, and the resilience and adaptability of the Indigenous culture in Australia, and specifically in the Parramatta area, the Darug people, the Barramuttagal clan. What we have to realise about our Eels is that there are clubs with an Indigenous background to their names, like Parramatta. There's Cronulla, there's Canberra. However, the Eels are the only club where the name actually relates to the logo, the NRL logo. So Parramatta, which of course was the anglicised version of Parramatta, which is it's the Parramatta clan of the Darug people of the Sydney region, and the Parramatta being the people from around the Parramatta area, and Parramatta refers to the place where the eels lie down, and so we've got the eel logo for the Parramatta Eels. It relates directly to the name Parramatta. There is no other NRL club that has that sort of link with culture in the name of the club. And I think that's something, because it's so unique, it should be special to every Eels supporter. And that means that these rounds are special weeks for the Parramatta club. And coming out with these designs every year that are just killer design upon killer design. It's just little wonder that the Eels continue to go to Sean Kinsella.
Yeah,
for
I mean, why wouldn't
designs every year?
He's absolutely branding them.
Yeah. So, John, you've just run through the Eels team list. We've talked about those injuries. Of course, once you throw in the players that the Eels have either released or, in Dylan Brown's case, deciding not to select.
Or loaning, I suppose, as Jason Riles clarified on 360.
Yes, that's right. The players who are on loan elsewhere. It's starting to get into a significant loss of player talent this year. And whilst it's not up in the realms of the South Sydney team, I think from memory, the Eels have only used one less player in first grade than South Sydney has. I think South Sydney might have used something like 34 players this year, 34 different players. I think Parramatta's used 33 different players. So the drain it's been there. It's been significant this year, that's for certain. But now when you're starting to talk about player drain, let's talk about the NRLW, because my goodness, you referred to it as a Pyrrhic victory, John, and for people unfamiliar with the term, it's a win that comes at great cost.
Yeah.
And that was certainly the case.
Harkening back to Roman and Grecian times, and like you said, a victory that comes at a great cost, often to the detriment of your overall campaign. And I don't know how you could categorise that comeback victory against the Dragons anything but Pyrrhic. And Parramatta losing 3 players, 2 long-term, 1 for a week in Kennedy with a HIA in the Tier or Category 1 concussion protocols. But worst case scenario for both Rory Owens and Cassie Tawihiku, 2 of their young stars in this team, Craig. Cassie being the victim of syndesmosis on a hip drop tackle. And it's a TBC on her due back date. But even if you're being optimistic and you say it's 8 weeks, which tends to be on the sort of lower end for bad syndesmosis, that puts her, maybe grand final week, I suppose. Maybe grand final week. And then for Rory Owen, it's a combination, fractured fibula and syndesmosis. So she's done her ankle and her leg in that tackle, which I don't think it actually had any hip drop sort of indicators. It was just an unfortunate injury. And, caps off a really miserable run for Rory this year when she got the jaw infection for Origin 3 that rubbed her out of that one, and has come back, played a couple of good games, and then gets the broken leg and syndesmosis of the ankle. So really, really tough news to the Parramatta Eels. Tacking onto that is also an injury that we didn't see on TV because it was on Bar TV, a broadcast on stream, was Yasmin Baker, who did what was a patellofemoral subluxation, which is a really fancy way of saying a dislocated kneecap. And she's due back next week, which is good, alongside Mia Middleton, who we saw last week on the injury report with an eye injury, which has now been clarified to be a fractured eye socket, due back next week. And then we still are waiting for Boss Kapoor to get back with a fractured fibula of her own, and she's due back in 2 weeks' time. So NRLW doing it really tough in terms of injuries. Steve Georgalis has made the sort of changes we expected, Craig. Very straightforward replacements. We saw Fleur Ginn come into the team live in the game against the Dragons, taking over from Rory Owen and scoring what was eventually the game-winning try in the 61st minute, I think it was. And she holds her place in the centres. So the back line has Abby Church at fullback. We saw Abby step up and play a bit of more 5'8" in that game when Cassie Tawihiku went down, did a great job. Zoe Fay and Martha Matelli are your flankers. Partnering Ginn in the centres is Lindsay Tui. Rosemary Beckett, who come back a couple of weeks ago in the HNWP, which is coincided with their good run, Craig, gets caught up to partner Rachel Pearson in the halves. So hopefully Rosemary can do a good job there. Elsie Albert, Ruben Charrington and Brianna Eels are your front row. Chloe Jackson, Mahalia Murphy and Riverly Arlo are your back row. Tanika Todd-Hunter, Paige Travis, Tess McWilliams and Tyler Amiatu are on the interchange. Obviously, the Eels having 2 spots on the interchange because Fleur was promoted from the backline utility on the bench into the starting team, plus Kennedy being concussed. So Tess and Tyler, who makes her season debut after a really, really good showing in the HNWP last week, scored a great solo try, Craig. I don't know if you caught that one, but rampage through the middle in those heavy conditions. Extend the roster: Ruby Jean, Kennard Ellis, Kiana Takarangi, Jessica Kennedy, and Chelsea McKira. The Eels only naming 4 of their extended bench, and I think that might be a function of the fact they only have 4 healthy players in their top 24 left.
Yeah. Well, what are there? 7 players on that injury report?
3, 6, 7. Yes, good man.
7, and what is it? A 24-man roster?
It's a 24
player roster.
Yeah, 24 player roster. Although you say man, I did get a chuckle on the weekend listening to one of the female commentators just using man as like the 18th, generic term, 18th man, manpower, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Just it's so ingrained into sports, isn't it? And so hearing the female commentators also using it made me feel a little better for any faux pas that we make on the live show.
Oh, we're gonna make some faux pas, John. Don't worry about that. We don't get paid for this, so we are amateurs. We're allowed to do it. So, yes, John. So that's the NRLW, and it's great to see Tyler Amiatu come back, and Tess McWilliams has obviously had a great season thus far, and she's only had what I think the 1 week out of the NRLW team with the return of Kennedy last week. So she has been a feature on the bench this season. So it's no surprise to see her back, and we know she'll handle that. Of course, the question will be just how much will we miss those star players in Rory Owen, a State of Origin star, and Cassie Toihiku, obviously an international player as well.
A genuine, fantastic talent. So, yeah, you couldn't. You'd be hard pressed to find 2 worse injuries for the Parramatta Eels. I know you could point at players like Elsie Albert and Rachel Pearson and Ruben Charrington and Abby Church. They're up there too, of course. But your State of Origin centre and like you said, your international representative 5'8", both of whom are very young and very talented. And yeah, it comes at such a critical junction of the season. The Eels winning against St. George, and it wasn't a pretty game, Craig, but they got the job done in a big fight back. And we had our issues with the how the Eels got the victory, and I think some of the pass selection and some of the moments of not panic but getting flustered by an invigorated St. George team. But they got the job done, and they were poised to then turn it around into a real march into the finals. But no, like they can still make the finals, and once you're in there, who knows? In 2023, no one goes any chance of making the grand final back then in a more abbreviated finals format. I understand, but they got the job done then up until the big dance itself. So you can still get to the finals and make something happen, but it's going to be much, much harder now.
John, let's given that we have the preview podcast where we go through the team lists again, let's just quickly rip through the lower grades.
Yeah.
And then make comment where we feel necessary.
Yeah. So, of course, changes to the Cup team that won against the Rabbitohs in heavy fashion. I think it was 54-6, Craig. We mentioned that Jordan Samrani and Kelma Tuolangi are up. So the team as stands, and pending any changes with Bailey Simonson's status, Alpa Twaddles at fullback, Jake Tungor and Hayes Dunster are your wingers. Bailey will stay in the centres alongside Richie Penasini. Lorenzo Talatino had a fantastic debut, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly. He'll continue to partner Ronald Volkman. Witter McGregor, Joey Lussick, and Tony Matteoli are your front row. Tyrese Lakini called into the starting back row to cover for, I suppose, some combination of both Semrani and Tuolangi being up. He gets to start on one edge with Dan Keir shifting from lock to edge to help cover that gap as well. Saxon Pryke then gets called into the starting team for the interchange, so lots of changes in the back row this week. On the interchanges, Manny Luke, Brock Parker, another young gun, great one to see in this team as well, Josiah Funayutu, who's deserved the call-up after some really good football on the flag, and then Samuel Luizu getting the call-up again to provide that backline utility on the interchange after some weeks in the RMC. So, yeah, pretty straightforward stuff again, Craig. The coaches in Nathan Callis in this regard, not overthinking their substitutes and replacements. But, yeah, I do like a lot of those calls. It's good to see Tyrese getting the call back in the starting team. I think he's been really solid this year. I mean, honestly, all the guys that are flag eligible to play Cup this year, I know Matty Hunter's obviously going to Newcastle, but he did a good job. I thought Raz Number did a great job. Richie Penasini, we just mentioned Tyrese Lakini, Saxon Pryke. They've all done really good jobs, so it's good to see him getting more and more starting looks when the opportunities are there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when you last looked, there was no Harvey Norman team. Has that changed at all? Or
It has changed. I did manage to get an update out. I think Mitchie might have got the scoop here because I think the Titans Forum are reporting they've signed Bailey Simonsson, so he might be Gold Coast bound. So well done, Mitchie, on the scoop if that's the case, because I believe the Gold Coast Titans online forum is also saying it. So there you go, a bit of a scoop there from Mitchie. But the HNWP team, on the back of their biggest win thus far this season and 3 straight victories for the Eels, Ella Carlisle was their fullback, the speedy fullback, having a really good season, honestly, Craig. You've already spotlighted her, but she's been really good. Paige Knapp and Caitlin Peter on the wings. Josephine Lenars and Kiana Takarangi are the experienced centre pairing. Matisse Bettridge gets a call back into the team because Rosie Rebecca has been caught up to the NRLW. She'll partner Aaliyah Sufan in the halves. Taylor Falanico and Ruby Jean Kennard Ellis, the starting bookends of Chelsea McCure at dummy half. I believe Taylor was called into the starting team in this regard, with Tyler Amiatu going up to the NRLW. Jess Kennedy is their captain and edge back row alongside Fontaine Tafua. Ashley Pottinger rounds out the back row. On the interchange, Ava Jones, Kalia Gray, Alana O'Loughlin, Matoisha Kalepo, the 4-player battery. And then the 2 substitutes, Dallas Graham-Wivel and Liana Dimmick. And they're playing on Monday night out at the Olympic Park facilities of the NSWRL Centre of Excellence.
Yes, and we'll speak about it shortly, but that's 3 wins on the trot for the team.
Yeah, and the 2 losses they had were against the table toppers, so they're doing really good stuff.
Yeah. So very encouraging signs there. And Jersey Flegg, John.
Jersey Flegg, and they're coming off a good win against the Rabbitohs as well. A couple of changes this week, though. We mentioned that Josiah Finrayuta's up in Cup, so there's 1 replacement there, and it's an Australian schoolboy rep, which is pretty handy to have, isn't it, Craig? But at fullback, Corey Lee getting the call up this week. So Eels losing both Cameron Bambutt, their other incumbent Australian schoolboy rep, and then Cooper Fuller, who was his replacement. I'm not sure what happened there, but a bit of fullback depth being tested this week. But Corey, a very solid contributor to the back line, will do a good job there. Lurima Rokasuka, after making his debut and getting a hat-trick in that debut, holds his place on the right wing. Raz Nava and Will Lewis are in the centres, and then Muhammad Al-Madin rounds out the back line on the other flank. Matty Hunter partners Josh Lynn in the halves. Bo Lucian, Paddy Spence, and Ryder Tongi, your starting front row. Dom Destratus, Chris Petrus, the aforementioned Australian schoolboy, comes in to replace Josiah Finrayuta, so that's a very handy replacement there. Petrus having a fantastic season in the SG Ball and the Australian Schoolboys Carnival, and his running mate in the back row in the SG Ball, Max Popo, doing a really good job in the flag 60s, and he holds his place at starting lock forward. Raf Destratus, Lachlan Koinakis, Damascus Nemia, and Yeti Samuelu are your 4-man interchange. Isaac Jim, the 18th man or concussion substitute this week.
Yeah, so just quickly touching on the results last week, we had, I think it was basically the only loss was the NRL.
Only loss was the NRL, and they had that valiant loss, which Jason Rolls was very quick in the first minute of his press conference to stress that it was the Eels losing that game, not the Storm winning that game, which I think was pretty much our feelings or our affirmations in the instant reaction.
Yeah, and looking at the NRLW result, because we haven't had time to talk about that in an instant reaction, but John, I sent a message to you probably 2/3 of the way through the game when the Eels were still trailing that I was concerned about the lack of cohesion that was happening in attack, and at that stage, I wasn't sure where the tries were going to come from, because every time the Eels seemed to get into a better attacking position, a mistake would happen, or there'd be a wild pass that would be thrown. And it was like the patience wasn't quite there. And then, of course, the moment that we needed someone to really step up steps Elsie Albert with that charge that would not be denied. It was just...
That was shades of Fui in the 2009 grand final.
Absolutely it was. And I think in the end, she carried 5 players across the line. And when you see the close-up in replay of how she managed to control the ball to ground it over the line as well, I mean, there was no doubt about the grounding, but it was inspirational stuff, and you could see what it meant to the teammates. And then it was a matter of the timing all clicking in that left side shift to Fleur Jin, who then made the correct decision in putting the foot down and taking the line on herself, because it meant that there was no risk of Zali Faye being bundled into touch, which could have happened with a sliding defence. And Fleur she had the acceleration that was going to get her through that line to be able to ground the ball, and it was the right call. It ended up being a win that spoke of the resilience and the determination of the team. I'm not sure that it spoke too much about form, because it was a Dragons team that was missing a number of players, as Tasha Gale kept telling us all the way through the game. And I don't know about you, John, but it seemed to me like she was riding the Dragons for a victory, was non-stop in having excuses ready
I'm glad
from the start.
The issue we have with commentators emphasising opposition injuries is not gender restricted to the NRL team, and that there's not a bias against the boys. The women cop are just as bad. Eels literally have 3 decisive injuries in this game, one of which was brought about by foul play, and there was some talk about it. But yeah, like you said, it was constantly mentioning that the Dragons were without their fullback and how tough they were doing it. It's like, yeah, how about the team that's actually actively lost 3 players and had 1 player left on the interchange? Look, if you go through with the magnifying glass, Craig, there was plenty to criticise in this game, wasn't there? I mean, I think Rachel Pearson's pass selection was very ordinary throughout this game, with some spotty shot calls as well. I think she rallied to have a better finish to the game. I think that the Eels, again, struggled for identity between playing aggressive north-south football through the middle and trying to shift the ball. But the big thing here is that they hung in. Their second half effort was much improved. They put a lot of pressure on the Dragons. They battled really hard through those injuries, like really hard. That deserves a lot of credit. I really liked what Abby Church did once Cassie Toihiku went down. I think she really injected herself into the game as their secondary playmaker, at times being the primary playmaker. And she was really, excuse me as I bring it back up here. I think she was, there we go. I'm not sure what happened there. My OBS getting busted. There were times where she was really good, and then it culminated in a try assist that was taken away from her with the game over. I don't know if there was enough to overturn that decision, Craig. I thought there was enough reason to suggest the ball wasn't held up. But yeah, I do credit the girls for a great fight back, and they're going to need that kind of effort for the next 4 or 5 weeks if they do get through to the finals, to get to the finals and then make some noise, because they're going to need all 17 players giving more than 100%, which I know sounds stupid, but you're trying to make up the loss of stars in the aggregate, which means you need to find a way to create a surplus with the other 17 players.
Yeah, and really the onus falls to a large extent as well on Rachel Pearson, because with her regular halves partner in Cassie Toihiku out of action, and Cassie's the one that's got the variation to the kicking game, because she can throw up those torque bombs.
Yeah, she gets get the ball to torque, exactly, and strong around the ball, great defender. Yeah,
John,
she can bang it 40, 50 metres. Yeah.
Yeah. So she doesn't have the experience of Rachel Pearson. She maybe can't as yet land the ball in a way that Rachel does. But Rachel's own kicking game it's either brilliant or it's at the other end of the scale at times. We need her to have the difference between her best, which is say a 9 out of 10, to have a worst, which might be a 7 out of 10. We need her worst to be a 7 out of 10 from this point onwards, because she has to make up for that loss of Cassie Toihiku. She's not going to be able to play the same game as Cassie. Rosemary Beckett doesn't play the same game as Cassie. Cassie has that. Some people have described her as like the Dylan Brown.
There are similarities. Look, if you're looking at the player that can contribute the most in a similar role, for talking about roster mirroring, it's probably a fullback, Abby Church.
Yeah.
And be able to run the ball and present that threat in the front line. I do see we have David Arlo on chat, who was mentioning the River played 4 different positions on the weekend: lock, prop, second row, and half. I'm not sure if there's a direct connection there with the Arlo surname, David, but there is no doubt that River had a blinder of a game. She had the crucial pass in that lead up to the Fleur-Ginn game winner. But, I mean, Arlo is one of those, River Lee is going to be one of those players the Eels continue to need to step up, which is crazy to ask of a rookie when you're looking at filling players in the aggregate, especially this week with no Kennedy. But, geez, River Lee's having a hell of a season, and you do wonder where the ceiling is for her. She's been playing so well across Tarsha Gale and NRLW.
John, the fact that she's gone from the Tarsha Gale Cup to a starting position in the Eels pack, it says volumes about her maturity and about the confidence that the Eels have and Steve Georgalis has in her capacity as a first grade player. So, the lower grades, John, I think the Eels' results in both the New South Wales Cup and the Flegg speak for themselves. They were overwhelming victories against teams that are decimated due to the injury crisis at South. But I guess the points worth making are that we had Lorenzo Talatina make an impressive debut again with
tempering the hype a little bit, because it is South Sydney who have, unfortunately, a Ron Massey Cup team right now, because their NRL team is a New South Wales Cup team, although they get a few troops back this week, of course, just in time for the Parramatta Eels. But, look, we also want to say to, in Lorenzo's defence, you can only play what is in front of you. And he went out there and did the job up against, senior football
He well and
opposition.
truly did it. John, I posited last week that he could well have benefited from that rise to New South Wales Cup, because I said I thought it had been a mixed bag in Jersey Flegg thus far for Lorenzo, where he'd had some really outstanding moments. And then I guess in a team which had had a couple of bad losses during that time, some not so great games, which you'd expect in a team that struggled with personnel and struggled to compete in a couple of matches. But when you go up in the grade, because Lorenzo's, to me, he's very much one of those play what's in front of you type of players. He doesn't look at any situation and go like a robot. Oh, this is, we're doing this play, we're doing this play, we're doing this play. If he sees something in front of him, he goes for it. Now, that can be sometimes difficult for teammates to adjust to, because they might be expecting something, he might deliver something else. And sometimes when you're watching Lorenzo, you see him bounce out of tackles, he heads to the right side of the field. Next thing, he's running back through to the left side of the field. He's got such a capacity to beat defenders that you see him bouncing here, there, and everywhere, and on some of his runs. When you move up through the grades and you're playing alongside more experienced players, they're going to adjust a lot better to who they've got there. They're maybe going to help to guide him a little bit more as well.
That was the point you made in the preview heading into that round. And you really saw it, didn't you? That the players around him reacted a lot faster, more intuitively to what Lorenzo was doing. They did a great job integrating him with that little inside play with Ronald Volkman from the scrum, and it was fantastic. Made great use of both of their athleticism. You saw.
I'll tell you what, blink and you missed it.
Yeah. It really was like, just really sharply done. And you look up as well.
And the next thing I saw him fly through, and I'm like, hang on. Was that an inside ball that's just got like I had to get the confirmation from those around because it just happened so quickly as I was trying to
not credited with an official try assist for the run, but it was his carry that set up Joey Lussick being able to dive over.
Yep.
Which again, Joey Lussick instantly pouncing on the opportunity from his what his 5'8" provided there. So you look at what he didn't have to do. Wasn't asked to kick a lot. Obviously, you had Ronald Volkman there handling the lion's share of the kicking. That's to be expected. That's not a particular weakness of Lorenzo's kit, but I wouldn't say he's also got a monster leg by any measure on the offset token there. But yeah, I look at that game. He got bumped off a couple of times, but that was because he was being really confrontational with his tackles. He was trying to get in there. He wasn't being soft. That's going to be an area that you're going to need to tune him up on, no doubt. I mean, it's all halves come into higher grades having to work on the defense. You're going to get picked on by the big boys. South Sydney tried to go after him. He did a good job. So
yeah, look, he'll do an NRL preseason, John, and the work that goes into the players with defensive technique.
Yeah, exactly. The club will do right by him, and he's got the sort of attitude that he'll do right by himself. So really keen to see what he can do. Great competition at the spot now. I mean, Josh doing great things in the NRL. Lorenzo doing great things at cup level now. And it's going to be interesting to see with the finals upon us, what did the club do with the cup and the flag? You got Matty Hunter and Josh Lynn down in flag pulling the strings perfectly there. But you're going to probably get Dean Hawkins, assuming he's eligible, Dean Hawkins and even Josh will probably be eligible for the cup finals. So did the club drop them back or they go with Lorenzo?
Yeah, good question, John. Good question. I guess it's. I think they'll probably make the judgment call on what's best for the development of those players, the younger players.
Yeah, and it's a balance of pursuing the premiership or the title in the lower grades versus player development for the not just long term, but the very near future.
Yeah, absolutely. And John, just very quickly, another win to the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership team. Yeah. That makes it 3 on the trot. The team's building cohesion, building confidence. It's now providing informed players for the NRLW to call on for these injuries that have been happening. So it's really functioning in that, I guess, that reserve grade role. And given the number of Pathways players that have made a home for themselves in the Harvey Norman team, I guess it's an example of the Eels Pathways in action and the success that will come from it. So congratulations to them on yet another win.
Yeah, we mentioned Ella Carlisle's speed. Rosemary Beckett had a great game down that right edge, working with Fontaine Tafua. They scored a number of tries down that side of the field. Tyler Amiatu had a great game for the middle. They're just great blend of physicality for the ruck and being able to shift the ball and really testing conditions. And I do want to give the ground staff a little shout out too, because that ground held up after 3 games of pretty heavy football and a very, very torrid weekend of weather. So good stuff.
Well, during the lower grades on the Saturday, John, it was almost like an inland sea. You could, and it was evident on the field that's being used for the community, which is a different coloured field compared to that. It's still a good grass covering, but it's had different grass has been sown into the NRL fields there and the match fields. But you can see that surface water that was there because there was that much rain that fell. Like it was torrential on Saturday. You had to end up with an element of surface water. So the fact that it drained away so well for Sunday speaks volumes about it. John, given what we were just informed about Bailey Simonsson and linking with the Titans, that's interesting given their backline talent that they've got there.
And the players
and
choosing
the fact
not to
that they're
resign.
under.
Yeah.
Sorry?
The players that they're telling that can be moved on because Cam Pereira is a name we've heard being told that he's free to look elsewhere. And I think in chat they were saying Philip Sami, who's a very handy player in his own regard, also being told he's can take his services elsewhere. So, it's
I would imagine Bailey wouldn't come super cheap.
No, and you'd think that he would be put you can't guarantee, but there would be very strong insinuations he would be getting a starting spot in that back line.
However, what if Des Hasler's not the coach?
Well, Mitchie, who's was on a bit of a scoop in chat, reckons it's going to be Brad Arthur. So I told him if he gets it all right, if it's Brad Arthur to the Titans alongside Bailey Simonsson confirmed for the Titans, we'll send him a TCT mug. I'll let him get in touch with you for the details there.
We'll we're the big time spenders. We'll send him a TCT mug.
Yeah. But if it happens, Mitchie, you can get in touch with me. We'll get your details, and I'll send one off to you. And I'll even get your name put onto the mug, so you have your official TCT personalised mug. But yeah, very interesting times on the Gold Coast because it's like, look, Trey Mooney is meeting with Newcastle, Craig. That was a report today, and I'm sure we can talk about it later in the NRL news. Bailey Simonsson meeting with Des Hasler for a guaranteed spot in first grade. And look, he obviously would have a good report of Brad Arthur, so it wouldn't hurt him that much. But how do you do negotiations with one coach knowing that he's a dead man walking? Same thing with Trey Mooney going to Newcastle, like provisionally, if he does end up there. How do you negotiate with a coach that's telling you, yeah, come to Newcastle, come to the Gold Coast, I'll do right by you, knowing that this man is probably going to be gone in the next 6 weeks?
Would they have had the coach involved in the negotiations?
Well, that's a fair point.
That might be the case. So maybe the players, the players being lured there, know more than the players that are still there. So who knows? John, just before we get into the NRL news, I said I wanted to talk about the 10-year member event. So that was at Parramatta Leagues Club. They held it in the bistro. They cleared out all the tables and chairs. It was set up quite well. They had 3 food stations around the periphery of the room. They brought the players in just after 6 o'clock. There were interviews done, I think, with about 6 players. And apart from that, the time from just after 6 through till 7:30 was the players mingling with the supporters that were there, photos, autographs, all that sort of thing. It was a really positive night. Isaiah Iongi, the players left and also the supporters left en masse when it was 7:30. So because the players have time delegated to them, I think, under the collective bargaining agreement for different events and how many events they do a year and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, so the players were there and available until 7:30. It was announced that the event was officially over from that capacity. But Isaiah Iongi, he was still there after 8 o'clock, mixing with supporters, the stragglers that were still there. And then he probably left a little bit after that. But Riley Smith, he was last to walk out with the last half dozen supporters. So the real stragglers that virtually had to be pushed out of the venue, like the night's over, people, time to move on. And he's one of those people that's moving out with them.
I mean, he's also been a regular fixture at Kellyville for the lower grades as well. So full credit to Riley for that engagement with the fans, really embodying what Jason Rolls has been looking for in the playing group.
It was interesting. I was walking out talking to Riley, and I said to him, how different was your life 12 months ago? And yeah, it was, let's just say it was very different for him. And it's a mark of what hard work can create for players, because that's basically what that's about. He said about being a player of elite level fitness, like higher than what Gutho reached, and that was saying something. And that opened a path to him for first grade because of what he was able to bring to the team in terms of that level of fitness. And now he's gone from being a player who was essentially on a train and trial contract. He just had a pre-season deal as such, and now has an extended contract to 2027, I think it is,
I believe
something
so, yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hard work, it has its rewards. John, what I do want to say as well is, for a start, the players were terrific with their engagement with the supporters, and really made the supporters feel like they were important to the players. So that was terrific. And on a personal level, I want to thank the people that continue to come up and say g'day. And it's probably changed the landscape for us that our faces are on the podcast. And so people will come up and say hello. I'd say across the weekend, including the lower grade games at Kellyville on Saturday into the event on Monday night, I would have had somewhere in the vicinity of 15 to 20 people that came up and introduced themselves over the two events. And as I keep saying to people, it actually means a lot that they take the time to come up and say g'day and introduce themselves. And I try to remember everyone's name. I have a brain like a sieve at the moment, so my apologies if I don't remember names, but I did do a shout out to the Dwyer family, and there was another family that went with that, and I'm going to give my apologies there with the both sides of the particular family there. So there was the Dwyer family, and then there's the other surname that's just gone. But I said a hello there. Also got to meet one of our TCT regulars who's there with the replies, Wilhelmina. That Wilhelmina's not a real name, but that's what she replies under.
People will be shocked on this, but 4020 is not my actual name.
Well, Sixties is my real name, but I go by the nom de plume of Craig.
Yeah. The artist formerly known.
But as I said, Christine, Joe, Peter, who said he goes to sleep with you every night, John. He had that special message for you, as I think I told you last night. I said, so you're actually saying that our podcast puts you to sleep.
bit of ASMR to help with the narcolepsy. Yeah, get some good sleep going.
So look, just so many. And Joe out at Kellyville as well on Saturday. So anyway, I'm trying my best to remember all the names, but no matter whether I've remembered your name or not, really do appreciate you coming and saying g'day to us, because it just shows the community of Eels supporters that are out there. And when you're at an event like that, and people were mixing, they were mixing with the players, they were mixing with each other. And what links us all is the blue and gold. And I think, John, the one thing, the message that's come through about what we do on our podcast has been the message for us that we're like everyone else, which is what we are. We're just Eels supporters.
Yeah.
Right. And because we wear our heart on our sleeve and we don't always say the right thing, but we're also very conscious of being behind the team, and that our role as supporters is important. I think it resonates with people, and that seems to be the message that people are saying to us. And I guess that's a message to us is don't change who we are in the way that we do things. So it was a big call for John and I to actually put our faces on the podcast, and we were really encouraged to do it because we were happy to just be our voices, and we didn't want to, we weren't interested in setting up ourselves as identities or anything like that. But the joy that it's brought for us in getting to meet people has made it worthwhile.
Yeah, look,
I will thank you.
Never ever label myself as an influencer or anything in that capacity, but the connections we've been able to enjoy with our fantastic supporter base and fellow fans, it has been very memorable. Like you said, 60s, and we do appreciate everyone that comes up and says hello. I mean, we had the fantastic live watch party, and we saw people like, I know Mike's in chat, but Mike Fleet, who also gave us a little tidbit that Mitchell Moses is apparently getting the not in the betting market for goal kicking this week. So that's an interesting one to monitor there. With Zach Lomax being a little bit streaky with the goal kicking, but yeah, the community's been fantastic.
Oh, that reminds me, John. As soon as you said the watch party, it reminded me Richard as well.
Yes,
Richard came up for a chat.
Richard came up for a chat. Yep.
Because he scored one of our TCT mugs on the live watch
and
night.
We've got a few people in chat talking about potentially getting mugs, and so we'll be chasing it up for you guys. Maybe we'll put an expression of interest down for the mugs because we want to make sure anyone can get them. Anyone that wants them can get them. But yeah, Mitchie, I don't think there's any talk about Iongi being signed up until 2030. Wouldn't mind it, but I'll have to wait and see. And
I asked him last night, Iongi, and he's still currently, I think, 2027.
Okay,
so but I think he added in. I'm pretty sure he added in. I actually hope it's for life.
Well, I mean, he's been a fantastic fit for the club, so and would be a priority retention, no doubt, given that what he's done on the field right now. And you can see how Jason Roll speaks about Iongi, that he's very much part of the core plans moving forwards. So good to hear that he's already signed up to in the 27, Craig. But like you said, hopefully he can have the sort of career that Gufferson had and be that sort of flag bearer or torch bearer for the Parramatta Eels moving forwards.
Yeah, and I think Riley Smith might have said something similar to some other people who have messaged me about that as well, about how long he'd sign up for if he had the chance. So it's there are people, some of these younger players they've developed that blue and gold in their blood in a very quick period of time. And we're pulling on the jersey means a lot to them. Okay, I'll throw it over to you now for the musical interlude, John.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a pondering process for me about musical interludes and what the theme's going to be. This week was pretty easy. The King returned, and I'm not talking about Lord of the Rings, but King of the Hill. 10 years after wrapping up its last season, have come back for another season. I think they've been syndicated for a couple more, and I just powered through it recently, last couple of days, and it's been a good watch. So go with the old King of the Hill theme this week, Craig. So one of those shows as a
feels
kid.
Like it's on fast forward.
Yes, it actually. I believe it. It's funny you talk about that because I saw a YouTube short about South Park's theme, and it actually is fast forwarded, based on I can't remember who originally wrote it, but it was much slower when it was originally written, and they were told to fast forward it by the band because they couldn't re-record. So, yeah, it's another classic intro for one of the, I suppose, maybe people say goats, but it was one of those shows as a kid you probably didn't appreciate as much, and as you get older, you start to relate with Hank Hill and the rest of the crew a bit more, and it certainly aged really, really well. And the most recent season, not bad watching. Primus, yes, yes, good shout out. Yeah, right on top of that one. It was Primus for South Park.
I was just going to say those sort of recording techniques harken back to the Beatles in their glory days, and I think from memory, the piano solo in my life was might have been George Martin playing just on a normal piano, and then it was sped up so it sounded like a baby grand or a high pitched tone that they got with it. So yeah, great techniques that people use for recording. Anyway, let's get into the NRL news. We mentioned before about Indigenous round, and how that's taking part over actually 2 rounds this week. And I think the Melbourne Storm are going to have their Welcome to Country, which they had shelved in the past, but they brought that back.
The cynic in me has some thoughts about that, about the timing of saying sorry with the potential sale of jerseys for Indigenous round. But it's really bungled by the Melbourne Storm, whichever way you want to spin it. Just very, very awkward.
Yeah, absolutely. John, Trainergate. Everything has to end in gate, doesn't it? Like with the
bloody Watergate
anything
ruined
that's an
everything.
incident.
It just ruined everything. Freaking
Yeah,
Watergate
it's-
Motel.
so-
Oh my god.
So we've seen the club fined, we've seen the trainer suspended.
Okay.
And Abdo was at pains to point out that this has been their decision was not influenced by social media as Phil Gould.
Yeah, it wasn't because they went
was-
soft. They went soft on the Panthers. They cited the
Yes.
previous incidents and said, okay, $50,000 and we'll slap the trainer around for 5 weeks on the sidelines. If the Parramatta Eels were told $50,000 is what it's going to cost you between making the top 4 and the top 8, would you pay it? Yeah, hello, yes,
Yeah.
thank you. They've done
Yes,
it. They've done
yeah.
it at least 5 times. It's been cited, but it's been more because there's even footage from the same game against the Gold Coast Titans of Elford, I think, being on the field too long and overstepping his capacity as the blue shirt trainer. I think it is. This is a club that has a actual behavioural pattern of exploiting the rules for their trainers, going back to, unfortunately, patient zero, Parramatta Eels, 2021 elimination final up on the Gold Coast or wherever it was, Sunshine Coast in the bubble. We had a 5-on-3 overlap that was taken away because they exploited the ability to stop a game for an injured player, and they've been doing it ever since. And I can only, the thing is, I can be angry at the Penrith Panthers. I can be upset that they are cheating because that's what they're doing. They are cheating. Let's not sugarcoat it. But at the end of the day, the real villain here is the NRL, who are actively facilitating this process by not punishing the culprit. And can you really blame the Penrith Panthers for continuing to go back to that well when they're just getting little slap on the wrist every time?
They are a team that doesn't need these moments, and yet history will say to you they have needed it, because if they lost that game to Parramatta as they should have, then that was the end of their season in that particular game.
Yeah,
and
the Eels, who were banged up, go on to face an out-of-sorts Melbourne Storm for a berth in the grand final.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look,
You're
John,
right. That patient zero was, in regards to trainers influencing game, was the Raiders grand final in 2019, but for the Penrith Panthers cheating, it was us. So, yeah, you are correct in terms of the broader scope, but for Penrith's systemic cheating, the Eels, unfortunately, were patient zero.
Yeah. And, John, you've raised what lengths would you go to win a competition, to win a game, to win a competition, and what would deter them? Well, as it turns out, there are no rules covering the treatment of breaches.
We have seen
and as
the NRL.
such, the NRL could have easily included the coach as the head of the support staff if they really wanted to make a statement about deterring the actions of the Panthers. They could have held the coach as the one who was accountable and suspended the coach.
I am stunned that there are no provisions for the on-field ref and for the NRL in a wider scope, both on and off the field, to punish the Panthers more, or if there are, that they're dusting over them. In baseball, which this is the most extreme extension of this line of thought, Craig, the umpire has the authority to eject anyone from the game. Player, manager, the guy that plays the orchestra if he's playing free blind mice. I kid you not, there is actual footage out there of the orchestra, the organ guy getting kicked for playing free blind mice because the referee made a bad call, umpire made a bad call. I'm not saying that the NRL referee should have the same scope of power, but they need to find a way to punish, to actively incentivize the kind of cheating we're seeing from trainers. And if that means holding the captain accountable for the team because he is the representative of the team, then I'm on board for it. If the Penrith Panthers are going to lose Nathan Cleary or Rosario to the sin bin for 10 minutes because the trainer decided to be an idiot and cheat, be on the undertake and cheat, maybe they will start disincentivizing the Panthers from doing it. I don't know. There needs to be, like you said, Ivan Cleary could be held accountable here because this comes from the top. This is systemic. This is not an isolated incident, which means that you go to the top of the franchise, and that is the coach, isn't it? So the NRL just absolute wet noodle of a punishment. Yeah, $50,000. Like, what do we do?
And look, this, John, this is really, really common sense to be able to rectify, because you can straight out have a simple procedural change, which is that under the circumstances that we saw on the weekend, the trainer, if he's there in the in goal with the players, has to remain there until the kick is taken, or he has to exit via behind the in goal, the dead ball line. So simple. But I think the simplest thing is if you've come out there as the team is waiting for the goal kick and you're delivering messages or providing water or whatever the case may be, you only get to leave when your team is running back to halfway for the kickoff.
Yeah, there needs to be a very strict protocol for their access and exit portals on the field, for their capacity in which they can influence the field. And like I said, maybe the NRL, and I find it, again, the NRL don't make it very easy to get a hand of the rule book, but it is hard to believe there is not scope within the NRL rules under some of the sections of the spirit of the game, which gives the refs quite nebulous powers to handle the sort of, more anomalous incidents that can happen, to have dealt a greater punishment on the field. I find it very hard to believe. And if there isn't, there should be, we don't need a rules committee to patch this problem, Craig. They could get on top of this within a week to create at least emergency provisions for the remainder of the season to help knock this sort of garbage out of the game, and then in the off-season fine-tune it and find ways to tighten up any potential exploits that come out of the changes. If the NRL were fair thinking, they'd be all over this.
John, besides the common sense approach with where the trainers can be when conversions are being taken, in relation to the trainers being out there on the field and delivering messages for full sets of six, like we also saw the Panthers do in the lead up to Nathan Cleary's field goal, where literally the trainer was pointing to get back beyond the 40-metre line with the next play for that 2-point field goal to be taken. So he's remained out there barking instructions, and who's to know that if he wasn't out there barking those instructions, that the players would have lost their way and wouldn't have set up. They might have charged further downfield and not been able to.
This is absolutely something across the code that all teams could be clipped on in terms of trainers doing that. But there is no doubt that Penrith are going above and beyond in their manipulation of the rules, and I say manipulation, they are blatantly treading across the line here, and they're getting away with it, which is, as Jamie said in chat, he guarantees they're going to do it again. I agree. Until they are actually punished and incentivized not to do it, they have nothing to lose here. And it has actually kept them in the hunt for the top four, which in terms of their percentage chance of winning the premiership is huge. Getting into the top four as opposed to being in the bottom bracket of the top eight, historically that means everything, and it gives you at least 2 bites of the cherry, which is crazy good.
John, this has to be a line in the sand. We know it won't be, right? But it should be a line in the sand for the NRL. They should be messaging the Panthers, outlining that further breaches could result in the coach being suspended. Like, bang, this is our next step, because they can do that. They could have done that now. But if they take it to that point, that should be the next step. Secondly, the technology's there for them to pick up what Elford, the trainer, was doing, where he remained in that set for all the way up to the field goal, and he was supposed to depart after the third tackle. You've got the bunker that's got all those camera angles. They could literally have someone in that bunker whose role is simply to watch that all of these other rules that exist around the trainers being on the field and about the reporting of injuries and all of those sorts of things are adhered to. Because if we have coaches who, it is alleged, are taking advantage of the lax enforcement of rules and procedures around trainer behaviours, the use of trainers out there on the field, then, I mean, there has to be action. It justifies having an official that's looking at those sorts of things. And it can be as simple as if a trainer stays on there beyond that third tackle and it looks like they're not leaving the field, the referee can just blow, because you're assuming they're in possession, right? So it's going to impact them, right? The referee can pull up play once it's got to the third or fourth tackle. Bang, you're supposed to be off. And it stops all momentum for them. And off goes the trainer. And yes, it might be frustrating for supporters watching the game, but I tell you what, if they're ordering trainers off after the third tackle and they're stopping the momentum of their own team in attack, it'll quickly stop. That practice will quickly stop. And if it happens, say, a certain number of times in a game, maybe it becomes a loss of possession. There are rules that they can bring in which would be quite simple in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think it's about time for that they start to bring those in.
Yeah, agreed. And the fact we're going to sit here on our hands and wait until the season ends for potentially another training incident to happen. And I imagine that the teams will be more cautious moving forwards because the NRL, while they were soft, they did sanction the Panthers, and the threat of an escalated punishment now looms over everyone. What's to say the Panthers don't do it again next year if the rules don't change? Like, why are we waiting? Like, they're not being incentivized to stop this pattern of behaviour. And until they are, and other teams too, this isn't just a Penrith problem, although they are by far the lead culprit. The NRL needs to get on top of this. And it is a joke that we're going to sit here and not do anything about it for the remainder of the year. And like I said, you could institute changes in the short term that would at least effectively stifle any more of this, frankly, bullshit behaviour, and then address it with more nuance in the off-season to make sure that the rules are watertight and don't, lead to weird anomalous behaviour and those kind of quirky incidents that can stall a game. But the fact that they're just going to sit here with a straight face and say, no, we weren't reacting to social media, this is an apt punishment, get out of here.
Yeah, yep. So, John, we go from Trainergate to Fingergate with the Tigers.
I don't know. This has been a very polarizing topic, hasn't it? You've got people on one side really upset, people on the other side saying it's nothing. I find myself leaning towards the side that, like, the player shouldn't have done it. It's stupid. And I think they should be sanctioned in some capacity. But I don't think you need to talk it up any more than whatever they're going to punish him with, and just move on and just tell the players not to do it again. I don't know. What's your feeling on this?
Well, look, I don't think the Tigers players should be getting too cocky about themselves and having shots at the supporters of a team sitting up near the top of the table. From that perspective, right? But secondly, Tim Manor on NRL Tonight said, as a Lebanese person, a person of Lebanese heritage, there was nothing that was offensive about what happened, not to the extent to which it's been blown up to being, to where the Bulldogs are supposedly making an official complaint to the NRL about the behaviour of the Tigers players.
Look,
please.
As Chad did a really good job of pointing out to me, this is really an in-house matter, so maybe we should let Penrith deal with it, because their C team beat the B team while the A team was out in the Gold Coast getting another drama up there. So let's let the Panthers deal with
it. Yes, that's very, very apt, John. Very appropriate. I don't think it requires us to talk anymore.
Look, with the players idiots, absolutely. And look, if players had gotten up and flipped the bird or given the double barrel birds to the crowd, of course they would have got sanctioned as well. But I think you sanction them and move on. And if they're stupid enough to do it again, that's when you really punish them. And which is what should have been the standard for the trainers as well. First time I did it, okay, benefit of the doubt. You did something stupid. We're gonna fine you and let it go. But next time you do it, heavy consequences, which I think should be the play here as well. And like you said, it's some chippy players from the West Tigers, and I think if you look at the players involved, they come from Penrith, and bit of confidence and arrogance even there. They don't mind chirping at players and at the crowd. And this was obviously a very emotional game with the background of the Galvin saga and Luai versus Galvin, all those sort of things. they did something
Yep.
stupid. Fine them, move on, do it again, sit them down.
Now, John, staying on one of those clubs anyway, the Bulldogs. If you're them, are you worried about what's happening with the club? Now, I asked that for a reason, and that's they just got hammered by the Tigers. They've had a pretty soft draw up to this point, and now they finish off the season with maybe a little bit more of a challenging finish with who they're playing. So just to run through who the Bulldogs will face over these last few rounds. So this week they're playing the Warriors. Not that the Warriors haven't got their own concerns. The week after it's the Roosters. The week after that it's the Storm. Then the last 2 weeks the Panthers and the Sharks. They could win the majority of those games. Based on their form against the Tigers, they could lose every one of them.
Yeah, and
were they to lose every one of them, it would be they finish in the bottom half of the 8.
Yeah, they'd make the 8, but they'd be treading water going into the finals. And they are such a, I know, and I do subscribe to the theory that defense wins you championships or premierships or whatever your competition title is. And they are one of the premier, if not the best defensive team in the NRL. I'm not sure if it's slipped in recent weeks. If I just have a quick gander at the ladder, I'll tell you. For and against, they are at 320, which I believe still is the benchmark across the code. And that is all well and good to have a great defense, and that is a cornerstone for winning the premiership. But they've got some serious attacking issues. We talked about Parramatta's red zone inefficiencies last week against Melbourne, Craig, and how that really was frustrating for us. The Dogs, I think, are the second worst red zone team on the season. Second or third worst. I think Fox Sports had the data up on the weekend, and they obviously made that push for Lachlan Galvin to help remedy that in a large capacity. But they are a very bipolar offense. They've had some big wins, but they really struggle when the clamps come on against the better teams. And they, red zone wise, they are very poor. So yeah, they do have some concerns, mate. And there's talk about Lachlan Galvin being dinged up now, although I think he's okay. But yeah, they absolutely have some concerns heading into the real meat of the stretch or the home stretch now. They've got to get this sorted out and fast, and I don't know if they can in time.
Now, moving from there, from concerns about the current competition, I put up a spotlight article today, John, about the player drain that's about to hit the NRL that maybe has been somewhat underestimated. And without going too deep into what's in my article, I'm still going to give away the gist of it. And that is that you've got 2 new NRL franchises that are coming in 27 and 28. And at the bare minimum, those franchises are going to need around 40 players.
Yeah.
That's the bare minimum. That's only saying something like 4 train and trial people or people that are training full-time that don't have an NRL full-time contract or a supplementary deal. All right, so clubs, you go to a pre-season and you're going to see in excess of 40 players that will do a pre-season. But anyway, you've got, let's say we go conservative, and that's 80 extra NRL players. At the same time, in England with the Super League, their competition is being expanded from 12 to 14 teams next year. They have an overseas player quota of 7 players per club. That's being lifted from 7 to 10 for next year. So there's so for the 12 existing clubs, that's an increase of 36 players across the 12 clubs, 3 per club. Then you've got 2 new clubs who can have 10 players each. So that's another 20. That's 56 players. Conservatively, the game has to find 136 extra players who are at the very least fringe NRL players or capable of playing NRL. Can it be done almost overnight, because that's what we're talking about. That increase for the Super League, and you know where they're getting those players from. They're getting them from the NRL.
Yeah, they draft the depth players and the fringe NRL guys that can't quite get a steady gig in first grade, absolutely. And then, so really, I mean, you talk about the sustainability of the top level. What is really going to be drained is reserve grade. New South Wales Cup, Q Cup, they're going to have their depth levels drained massively because they're either going to go to the expanded ESL or to the NRL expansion franchises, of which, like you said, they're going to aim towards 20. They need to get to 20 if they're going to make the draw and the ladder work out long term without the weird round one buys and all the different imbalances that come around having an odd number of teams in competition, whether it's New Zealand 2 or whatever. They will get to that bridge at that point, but that is a huge player drain, isn't it? I mean, you're testing NRL is pumping out a lot of great young talent. I mean, it feels like the pathways for clubs across the board are better than they've ever been, but they need to be, because that future growth and future drain, it is looming and quick.
Yeah, and there is no question. And by the way, in the article, I didn't even dive into that R360, that rugby 360 competition that they reckon is going to target NRL players to get the quality players that are needed for the international franchises that will exist in that competition. But there hasn't been this sort of almost overnight player demand since the Super League war.
No. Yeah,
And we all know what ended up happening to the standard of the game in that Super League year, because the Super League itself, the games were almost not watchable. They were like games of touch football, in all seriousness. There were players running around on huge contracts that you'd barely heard of. And it wasn't sustainable. The NRL had to rationalise the number of teams. So I think that's where it came back to. There was about 22 different teams running around across the two competitions, and they rationalised back to 16 for the NRL when it started. From memory. And so, 6 franchises just disappeared. And that was probably the best thing that happened for the competition, for that to be the eventuality, because it wasn't going to be possible for the game to have the standard of player that they needed. Now, yes, the game will always produce new stars. It's a nature of the game. But the standards that are required to be a first grade player means that there are players who don't progress to being NRL players. And there's normally good reason for that. And sometimes it's got nothing to do with talent. It's all the intangibles. Do they have the dedication to make it? Are they unfortunately impacted by injury at key times? Those sorts of things. Now, if you have players who end up getting a first grade career who under normal circumstances maybe wouldn't, is that good for the game? Especially like as this happens almost overnight, because that's what this changes. It will be almost overnight. And I've put forward the questions about, without necessarily an answer, although I've tried to answer it with the Eels. There'll be clubs that I think will struggle. If you're a club that hasn't got its development pathways in really good shape, you're going to struggle, because you're going to need to more and more develop your own players, or at least go out and source them at a young age and put them into your pathways teams. If you don't have them in as local products, you at least make them a local product. You develop them yourself. You find them elsewhere and put them into your systems. Or if a club doesn't have its recruitment and retention team.
Jamie makes a great point too. We always focus on the players, but the other one that we don't really talk about is the coaches. Are there enough quality coaches going around?
That
is a huge problem.
I guess that's a fair point. because there's a lot of regurgitation of coaches as they bounce from one club to another.
It's not just the NRL. Coaching is an incredibly incestuous vocation. Once you're in, you just, like you said, you bounce around. In the NFL, you see it all the time. Coaches that get sacked bounce up as assistants or get a gig somewhere else. Same in the NRL. Like if you're in, right? And that's the hardest part, is getting your foot in the door. And then once you're in there, you have to really burn bridges or be really bad to get kicked out.
Yeah, and I think I said to you last week about a wise friend of ours, John, who'll be nameless, who said to me that there's 3 stages in the life of an NRL coach at any club, and all of them involve the hands on the back. In the first stages of the career, they're getting patted on the back. Oh, you're doing a great job, mate. The second stage of the career, the hands are on the back and saying, don't worry, mate. You're doing okay. We've got your back. We've got your back. In the third stage, those hands have got a blade in them.
Yeah, or they're pushing off the edge one way or the other. Yeah.
So
it is a natural cycle for coaching, yes.
Yes. So, and I guess if you go to your analogy, John, where they're pushing them off the cliff, at some point there's other clubs that are there with throw the net out,
the life raft down the bottom of the cliff. Yeah. It is always funny seeing the merry-go-round and how coaches, they only ever get off when they want to get off. It feels like, which is without context, that is a crazy statement. But the context is important here. They only get off when they want to get off.
I was wondering where you're going with that, John. To be honest. You got to remember, this is a G-rated program here, and it's rare that we work blue as well.
And look, again, chat point out more great stuff. The NRL haven't even got enough competent officials for the games we have right now.
Oh, yeah.
And you're asking to schedule more games. You're talking about 2 more games a week once you get to 20 teams, right? Because one team's on the bye, so a full round would be 10 full games in this hypothetical. Yeah, there is a lot. Logistically, that I would love to have a 20-team competition, and you got to talk about conferences and how you're going to structure your finals and whatnot. There's been a bit of talk of an NFL-style conference system, which, to be fair, people sort of lash back at. We have a soft conference system in our current setup, Craig. You look at the teams that we play twice a year consistently in teams like the Bulldogs and the Tigers. That is your conference right there, Western Sydney, and obviously in Queensland they have their own conference and vice versa. But yeah, it is not as simple as expand the 20 teams. Yeah, you bring in some young kids and some journeymen and you fill out the rosters, and the code's a bit weaker for the short term, but maybe you grow into a position of strength. You are set and allayed on all sides when you do this. Logistically, from top to bottom, you need more travel, you need more officials, you need more coaches, you need more auxiliary staff and trainers and medical staff and assistant coaches. There are so many moving parts that go into one club, let alone 20. So yeah, this is a legitimate issue that we need, being the code. Obviously, if the NRL want to put TCT into a exploratory body to convey the issues of logistics for a 20-team NRL competition, sure. But there are people that get paid a lot more than us to deal with these issues, and they need to be on top of it.
Just remember, people, that we are available for hire.
Oh, yeah. If you want to engage our professional services on logistical issues and the scope of an expanded competition, we can put together some non-AI bullshit for you if you really want that.
John, I didn't even bother to delve into issues like the staffing of a club or the need for more officials, and because it becomes a real problem.
It's like a chicken and egg or Ouroboros. Like, where do you start? Where do you end?
John, and just think as well, when you're talking about match officials and what have you, that the goal will be to get the NRLW to 20 teams.
Yeah, that is a stated objective.
10 games.
That is a stated objective. Club parity on NRL and NRLW. Yeah,
20 matches across the 2 competitions.
So are we talking? Are we talking scheduling of midweek games for the NRLW in order to balance out the schedule? I mean, that is great for the TV bargaining side of things, having matches from Wednesday through to Monday, right, between NRL and NRLW, which might be a reality. But yeah, how do you logistically, if you're already fighting with, to a lesser extent, A-League and Rugby Union for venues and other concerts and whatnot, Does Sydney and Australia have enough venues for 40 teams across the NRL and NRLW to be playing prime footy?
John, something has to happen because you're also talking about 3 grades of Sydney teams as well. And 3 grades probably of New South Wales based teams. And you're talking about match officials needed for all of that. You're talking about all the players needed for that.
Yep. Groundskeepers, sideline officials, commentators.
All this sort of stuff. And you also have to make sure that if you've got a real strong, viable NRLW competition, that you don't have the 2 competitions cannibalize each other. And if you've got, and we've already had this situation happen where the matches are staged at the same time. So you've had the NRLW Magic Round, which was unfortunate with the weather as it's occurred, but the matches are being staged at the same time as NRL games. So you're asking the viewing public to choose between NRL and NRLW. Now, is that fair in any way to the NRLW? It's not, because a rugby league fan it's a no-brainer that as much as like we love the NRLW, we love the passion of the players, we love the skill of the players, and we choose to watch that. But if you're asking rusted-on fans of NRL to give up NRL to watch NRLW live, it's not going to happen. Like, you have to be realistic with that. It's not going to happen. What you have to do is to create a schedule which allows both of the competitions to survive, to thrive, not survive.
Yeah, exactly.
Thrive.
Yeah, exactly.
And if that means that one of those, if you're going to play them at the same time of the year, you have to find different days. I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Again, so does NRLW play Monday to Wednesday, and you have 7 days a week cover for broadcast, which is a strength of any potential negotiation, but it then puts the women of the NRLW in an awkward position in terms of scheduling, and they'd have to adapt to that. But that might be, the future. And like you said,
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah,
it could be, or it could be that the games are played. I'm sure there is the capacity to have some games on the weekends, because we don't push, and especially when you've got locations like Perth that'll be coming in. So they'll allow a little bit of a change when it comes to scheduling. But yeah, there has to be the capacity for this, John. It has to be looked at. But anyway, we're getting off topic a little bit. If people want to add their thoughts on that, the post is there. It's this week's spotlight topic.
Yeah, great forum for you or pseudo forum for people to engage with your discussion points there.
And finally, John, Lloyd Perrott has launched action against the Sea Eagles for the 2017
correct
pre-season, where he was at heat exhaustion. I think that
water deprivation and heat exhaustion. Yeah, and I think his legal team are alleging that he has had ongoing health issues and loss of potential earnings from the NRL on the back of it. Very sensitive topic. Obviously, Keith Titmus is an unfortunate victim in regards to, was it 2020, Craig? I'm trying to think who, he passed away under similar circumstances. So there is obviously some grounding here. You want to hope.
And it's an area where we can't talk too much on because it is a legal
exactly.
issue.
So there's a lot of alleged things that'll play out in the courtroom and whatnot. Obviously, it is a very concerning allegation, and again, with what happened to Keith Titmus, there is a potential for there being grounding here. You want to hope there isn't. You want to hope that Manly didn't have that complete lack of common sense in regards to player welfare. We'll have to see how it plays out. There could be a settlement. This could go through to a full trial, Craig. A lot can play out here in court. But, Lloyd Parrott was a fairly well-regarded prospect at one point, wasn't he? Younger brother of, was it Sam? Sam Parrott.
Yes, so Sam was like a fullback
winger.
And
Lloyd was a big prop.
Lloyd was a front rower from memory.
And, had some big raps on him. If I haven't even looked at it, but he stuck around in the NRL for a little bit. Lloyd Parrott played 56 first-grade games between the Bulldogs and the Seagulls from 2014 to 2019. And then obviously wash out of the game after that tenure at Manly. But this is obviously something you sit back and see how it develops. If there is any truth to the allegations, then you've got to imagine that the people involved would be dealt with, like not just legally and whatever sanctions they face from the court of law, but within the code would face some pretty heavy sanctions in terms of deregistration and not being able to be involved in the game. And then likewise, you're obviously hoping that Lloyd isn't this isn't a scheme. You want to have some faith in humanity in that regard. But again, you wait and see how this one plays out, I suppose.
The financial repercussions from it, I would imagine that club insurances.
Yeah, there are mechanisms here that would help cover. And in terms of the number that's been alleged as a damages claim, I believe it's not like necessarily common practice, but it is somewhat common that you always aim at the maximum potential payout and then you work down from there, just how the legal system and lawyers work. I think they're talking about $5 million or something like that in regards to lost earnings and damages. Be very interesting to see where this sort of breaks out to. Do they settle? Do they go through for full trial? And like I said, if there is any sort of guilt found in terms of staff involved, then I do hope that there are very heavy sanctions that come down on the back of it, because this is, I say common sense, this is extreme common sense in terms of hydration and player welfare and what you try and push players. You want to push players to be the best version of themselves and be the most elite of elite athletes, but there are just boundaries that you don't cross. And if they were denied water and pushed into heat exhaustion, then I certainly hope that both civilly and criminally things. Yeah, and Peter, you're right. It is very hard to prove. The burden of proof here is going to be very high, and that's why this case will be fascinating. If the legal team do have a belief that they've got a strong case, then best of luck to them. And if they can prove these allegations from Lloyd, then like I said, hopefully the guilty parties involved or the prospective guilty parties involved get their juice, because there is no place in the game for that. Just common sense. Look after your boys and your girls.
John, what I've seen in recent seasons with training and especially pre-season is that the coordination and the organisation that occurs with every session, you wonder how it's possible, because they have their markers where like everything's timed. They'll do so many minutes with this or so many minutes with that. They've got like a Parramatta, they'll have 2 or 3 fields marked out, got the markers already out before the players are even there. They know when they're transitioning from this drill to this field to that field, and it's all, they're all basically on a timer, and there'll be the coaches are all mic'd up. The drinks are constantly being prepared. The drink breaks organised at certain intervals so that the players are hydrated.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that you want your players to be able to overcome adverse conditions in terms of game and training, but you are actively hurting their ability to perform when you don't look after them from a very basic sports science level. Hydration and nutrients are a huge part of extracting the most.
Well, you're not going to prepare players
for a game by starving them of food and dehydrating them. Exactly. So, like I said, if they can prove these allegations, then it is both an indictment on the staff at Manly at the time, from both a humanity level and from understanding of the game from a functional, basic level. So, definitely something to monitor.
Yeah, absolutely. So, John, comments, opinions that have been expressed in chat during this podcast.
Well, we're talking F1 with Mitchie in chat right now, so it's been a good little chat here. But yeah, some great. I mean, we shared those thoughts with expansion and the logistical issues that come there. Chat, any questions before we start wrapping up? Be really interesting to see thoughts on, I suppose, the NRL topics. Any Parramatta stuff you want us to quickly deal with before we start to wind up the podcast? I know it's closing in on an hour 45 now, so we've been rambling for a good bit. But you guys have had some great engagement. Can we have a Formula One podcast? Us 60s. We can do other sport, especially in the off season when we're looking for things to talk about. We can look at other sports.
No, we're going to get down the music reaction.
Formula One
Rabbit
podcast. I am happy to talk weekly. Have a little weekly segment on how Oscar and the guys are going. Why Simo News now? Oh, you're talking about the timing of it, Jamie. And that's what we we're trying to puzzle out earlier in the podcast. The timing does feel a bit off, doesn't it? And we're trying to tease out whether it's a managerial power play, whether Bailey feels like he's just completely locked out of first grade because Jordan Samorani got the nod over him this week. Did Jordan Samorani get the nod because Bailey had asked for a release? I don't know. There are a lot of little pieces to this, Craig, that we don't have the full picture on. It will be very unfortunate to lose him. And again, strong ties to the Titans are starting to emerge. Mitchie broke that one in chat, did a great job there. And I think on the Titans forum, they're also talking about it too. So, yeah, I don't know. The timing, very awkward because he can't get an immediate release. I mean, he can be immediately released, but he can't play football. So, I don't know. Does he release at the end of the season? Yeah.
I think that's the bigger question to ask. But I think there is no doubt all these things have transpired. He cannot be released to play immediately this season.
No.
But I suggested the question now becomes, will Jason Riles keep him on?
No, exactly, because Riles has been very adamant about people being bought into what he is bringing to Parramatta. And if Dylan Brown's not getting a look in and he's your premier 5'8", why would Bailey Simonsson get a look in when he is obviously battling in the depth charts for the back line? So, good thoughts there. John Rich with a question saying he's seen on zero tackle the Sharks could be losing some forwards. Anyone you would be interested in among Talakai, Hamlin Uele, and Burns? Hamlin Uele has fallen off a cliff this year, actually. Sharks fans not very worried about potentially losing him. Talakai is an interesting one, Craig. Hard one. They love him there. They have a huge rap on him. Gives you that weird sort of hybrid backline back row utility, but the Eels already struggled.
Almost like Murata.
Yeah. Murata is a better player. But it's similar. Him being more of an explosive, I suppose, ball carrier for Murata. But Murata, I think, was a more rounded player as both a forward and a back. I suppose you look at maybe Talakai for the right price, and Kicks is in agreement there. He says he'd take Talakai, but he's getting squeezed out theoretically getting squeezed out because of cap issues at Cronulla, which makes you wonder how much is he looking for on the market. What is a good market for Talakai, Craig? What would you pay him to be your sort of bench Mr. Fix-It guy across the back line and back row?
I wouldn't pay him more than $350, John.
Yeah, I think for Parramatta's perspective, that's pretty reasonable. He might be looking for more for $450, $500. You know, he's been quite productive in the NRL, but the reality is he's been playing interchange for him and been obviously a moonlight starter when they needed it. Theoretically, he could be a good pickup, Eminem, if you can get the best out of him. But his form has created this year. He was very good last year, but has really struggled for impact this year. And I look at what happened to Royce Hunt at the Tigers, and I'm a little bit leery of picking up an impact forward like that from Cronulla once they're out of a system.
John, I'd just like the Eels to focus on getting a premier middle forward who can be, if we throw the name of Tino Fasua-Malaawi out there, just as an example, right? You get someone like that. I think the Eels have got players coming through their systems, plus the signing of DeBellin, that the recruitment of an elite player like him is a difference maker. And you don't necessarily have to go looking at mid-range recruits elsewhere, because I think we've got enough players in our system that sort of hit that mark, or maybe they've got a promise of being able to be a little bit more. for example, John, I spoke the other week, and I think we're pretty close to the mark with our back rowers that we have. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't take a particular South Sydney player to play in a back row role.
I think that's sort of metric you're looking at, whether it's a Tino or a Keon Kalamatangi. And I do want to caution fans that it's not like the media has made out a lot about a war chest that the Eels have. I think you need to be somewhat circumspect about what the Eels have in their capacity to recruit someone, Craig. Bearing in mind that they are juggling a couple of players out on loan, which is making it a little bit more difficult to sort of facilitate potential signings. But I think this is my personal perspective. I think the Eels have the capacity to go out there and make a strike signing, but I wouldn't be expecting multiple significant additions to the squad.
No. I think that's probably the way to word it, John, is that we'd like to think the capacity is there for a strike signing. But yeah, that war chest.
The media's had a lot of fun with that one, and I think that war chest is entirely contingent on those balls the club are juggling in the air right now. And even then, if they do pan out the way the club would like in terms of loaner players going on to future endeavours outside of the Parramatta Eels, there are internal re-signings and upgrades and young players coming through that the club need to be budgeting for. And when we talk about guys like Lorenzo Talatina and Josiah Funayuta down in the Cup this week, they're part of the plan, which means they need to be accounted for in the top 30 sooner than you'd expect. So that's where a lot of money goes to.
Look at our dummy halves, for example. That you had one player who was basically a train and trialer and has just been upgraded to a 3-year deal.
Upgraded to top 30, upgraded top 30. To then extended into a long-term deal. Those funds, they add up very quickly.
They had to come from somewhere.
Dylan Walker, Talon the Silva, mid-season acquisitions. Sam Tuivasa extended.
Yep, Talon de Silva didn't come cheap, right? He wasn't part of the plan before. Dylan Walker, again, mid-season signing, and is a quality player. So these were players that have been added to the roster this year, and contracts going forward upgraded, and they're not the only ones, because it's been a host of players who have debuted this year who've been upgraded, extended, upgraded, whatever the case may be. So we believe that the club is simply in a position to make probably just the one strike signing if they wish, and not too much more than that.
And you look at the balance of the squad and what Jason Riles has done with the investments he made this year, both pre-season and obviously mid-season with those acquisitions in De Silva and Walker. And we keep talking about green roots and whatnot, but the club has made significant investments that are paying off. And there's also provisions to upgrade guys like a Young you got to keep open too. You're tipping him to, you being the plural you for the fan base, are tipping him to blossom into a genuine star at fullback, which means you got to pay commensurate with that, don't you, Craig? You can't just say, he's going to get $300,000 for the next 6 years, a year.
No, that's not going to happen because market forces are going to say, how are you travelling?
Exactly. A Yongi, I have no doubts that a Yongi aspires to be an Eel long term under Jason Riles, but his manager is going to squeeze us as well. Like that's just how that is part of the negotiation process. And maybe
Dylan Brown, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a player who told all and sundry he was going nowhere,
and I think that Dylan was going nowhere. Like I think he was not telling fibs. He was going to be a Parramatta Eel, and then you bring up the Alan Bond. You find your own Alan Bond, and he got his Alan Bond there in Newcastle to the point where I don't know if you caught up on that 360 interview, Craig, because you were at the members event and Jason Riles had his live appearance with the panel there. But Jason Riles was quite frank that Dylan would have been insane to turn down the offer he got from Newcastle, and the panel were laughing in agreement because that's what it was. And sometimes you can't factor for stuff like that.
No, you just can't. And that's when, if you've got a club who are prepared to offer like an insane level contract, just insane, where the player just goes, I'm set for life on this. And you know that, as you said, John, you can't factor how you fight that. Because when you fight that, when you try to go close to matching it, you don't have to actually match it, but you have to start to get close.
Yeah, you need to be ballpark. Like you can leverage loyalty and play a sort of intangible player enjoyment at your club to some capacity, but the reality is you still need to be in the ballpark to match that deal. So and it puts an imbalance. If you go and do that, you create an imbalance in your roster. So the club that goes searching for a player and throws those offers out there, they go into it cognizant of the fact that they're going to have an imbalanced roster, and they're prepared to have an imbalanced roster to get their target. Yes.
Now, do you want your club doing that to get their target? Because you know it's going to come at a price.
And sometimes you have to take a calculated risk like that relative to what the player market and your development pipeline has. But I don't think the Parramatta Eels in that sort of pressing need, Craig. I think they've got so much talent coming through that Jason Rolls is very publicly earmarked. I mean, he was on 360 last night talking about the 6 Australian schoolboys we've produced in the last 12 months, the 7th that we've gone and signed from the Cowboys, the Broncos and Jackson Quintus, alongside the reigning SG Ball Player of the Year, who he didn't mention by name, but he mentioned the title, and that's Lorenzo Talatona. And there are a host of other players around them that maybe haven't got the same blue chip potential, but could be very solid contributors to an NRL team down the road and could blossom into something more perhaps beyond that. Yeah, the club's in a good position. They don't need to go out there and get that imbalance going. A couple more questions before we wrap up, guys. I did see a question from Sean a couple of times tonight. I'm sorry, just get to it now, mate. He was asking about some TCT merch in terms of a T-shirt or a shirt, Craig. I do promise we are working on merchandise, guys. We just want to make sure we get it out to you and it's not half-assed and it's not dodgy. And there's a few other things behind the scenes that we're also working on in terms of, again, you bring up that word tonight, logistics. So we are going to get that done. And then I think there was a really good question from Chris Hill there. Where are you, Chris? Yeah, and he's following up on that theory of signing a big name forward. If we do sign a player in that regard, how long does Junior go on for? That is a good question because Junior, a player that Jason Rolls flagged on the show last night, being part of that leadership group alongside Mitchell Moses, having himself a pretty good season. I would say almost a very good season, Craig. He is a really interesting one to try and project because he is getting older. He's on good money right now, which means that there is a potential to maybe negotiate him down in a future deal. He's also got the skill set that can adapt to a reduced minutes, perhaps, but expanded role in the team as an interchange prop or as he can be a ball playing prop. He can be a north-south prop. What would you do with Junior Barlow on that sort of theoretical scenario, Craig? Does he stick around with the club? Does the club let him go? Does he take a reduced role? I mean, we've used him in a couple of different ways this year. He's like a ability to pivot the ball out wide. He can play a bit of smash around football. But a good question from Chris nonetheless.
I think there's two futures for Junior, John. First is continuing with the Eels and possibly looking at 1-year extensions at a time.
Doing the Josh Papali'i sort of route at Canberra.
Yeah. And then what he'll probably balance that against is finishing a career in the English Super League. Now, there was murmurings about him doing that before. It would then come down to pure money, I reckon, for which one he'd take. Because I don't think Junior would want to finish his career with a different NRL club, not at this stage of his career. But if the conversion, the financial conversion was beneficial to go and finish the career in the Super League, I reckon he'd take that as an option. Like if he got more for that than what he was offered at the Eels, that's probably a way that he'd like to finish his career. But while ever any money at the Eels outweighs anything he could get overseas, I think he'd stay at the Eels. And I think at some point the Eels won't offer him something, and then he finishes his career.
And then you'd imagine that there would be something off field for Junior for the club. I mean, he has been a real central figure for the club across 2 stints. So post-playing career, there would be something at the club if he would like it. But yeah.
Oh, without question, John, he's a leader within the Pacifica community.
And that is an important
Respect
demographic for not just rugby league, but for Parramatta, and something that Jason Riles has really emphasised too. So, yeah, look, Junior's game, he has the ability to mature and take his game into a really cool niche if he wants to. If he wants to take the reduced role and, like I say, swallow his pride like as if it's an issue. If Junior, takes that reduced role and reshapes his game around what Jason Riles can pivot, kind of like what Quinton Gutherson chose not to do, right? If he takes that similar framework for his role and says, no, I'm now in the back end or the back nine of my career here at Parramatta, but I can still be a valuable member of the squad by doing this, then he could stick around for a number of years. Look at Josh Papali'i and how he has managed to extend his career at the Raiders with serious value, being more of an interchange prop and being a limited minutes prop compared to being the 60-minute beast he used to be in his prime. So another question quickly, one that we've had a few times tonight, having a chance to address the back row, Craig, which I suppose is tangential to what we're just talking about with that Splash signing. I don't know if the back row was signed, honestly, at this point. I think maybe Buzz got his mail crossed here. There's been a lot of talk about a signed back rower. Maybe there is one there, Craig. I don't know. But we've talked about the likes of Tino and Keon Koloamatangi being ideal targets. But I don't know if the club has signed a back row at this point.
John, look, I've tried to do a bit of subtle digging. And if I'd found out something, certainly I wouldn't have been naming names, but I might have said something like, I'm confident we'll pick up a back rower. Without trying to do any sort of, putting out something that I shouldn't. I can honestly say I've heard nothing in that regard. So I
was a little bit surprised. I sort of came out like a bolt out of the blue when Buzz talked about it. So you would have thought he would have had some good sources to break that on 360, but maybe he sort of had that rumour come across his desk quickly and sort of passed it on. Michael Formosa wants to bring back Ray Stone. Would not be against it. Certainly not a star signing, but Stoney is a great, you say glue guy, he's your brick and cement guy because he knocks people over, doesn't he? Would not be against that, but certainly not a star. When do you think the Eels will win a comp? Your honest opinion is from Jazz. I mean, the way Jason Riles is building, I don't think it's within an unreasonable capacity to say within 2 to 3 years. But again, there is a lot of luck that goes into winning a premiership, and Jason Riles can be the great coach that we think he could be. But if he continues to have seasons like this where he's devastated by injuries, there's only so much you can do with the resources you have. So he's going to need a bit of luck. Going to need some good calls.
There's some people I know, John, and when they hear this, they'll know that I'm talking about them, that they believe 2027.
2027,
there you go. The year.
That's the year. So we're going to build next year on that schedule, 2026. Will probably be the year we expect to get into the finals and make some noise. And then 27, you make the big step. So you're saying that next year could be a grand final qualifier, maybe even a grand final year if we're looking at the Penrith schedule. And then the year after.
Let's put no expectations on next year as yet. But we know what we've seen, a team that's been so near and yet so far in matches this season. Next year, I think we'll see more ticks in the W column than this year. Where that takes us, who knows? But I think a lot of contracts will be sorted out for that 2027 season. I think recruitment might be at a peak for the 2027 season because it will be the end of some historical contracts for certain. So, we'll put down a tick for 2027.
Okay, I like that. I like that timeline. I can deal with that timeline. And yes, it'll be a very, very good year for it, actually. 2027 being a nice little anniversary year for the Parramatta Eels too.
Yes, yep.
All right.
So that takes us to the end of the podcast.
Yep.
What can we say about our listeners? We really appreciate everyone tuning in. It's it means a lot to us. It means a lot to us, as I said, when people come up and say g'day.
Yeah.
Because just being able to, first of all, put a face to some names that we know, drop in chat or put comments on the other blogs. But also when we're finding someone's name for the first time, or meeting someone for the first time, it's just great. And,
Yep.
and we really do appreciate it. We appreciate suggestions, requests, all that sort of stuff. Some of the things we've been talking about recently have been DMs that people have sent. Can you talk about this? Can you talk about that? And I think, we've responded to that by doing just that in the news podcast.
Yep, absolutely.
So thank you for sticking with us, all of our listeners. Thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. And, of course, Paraleague's the home of the Eels. We'll see you there this week, a couple of hours before kickoff on Sunday, where the Eels will march further up the table after overcoming the North Queensland Cowboys.
Which we will be
John,
previewing very shortly. And on that note, mate.
Yes, as I always say, go you mighty Eels.